Hello, hello, hello. Welcome into another episode of Sports Talk Chicago. I'm Joey Christopoulos. You can follow me at Joey Sports Guy. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Happy holidays. Happy 4th of July. Whether you're listening to this episode all the audio only with your podcast, you can check out Sports Talk Chicago wherever you get your podcasts, whether it is Spotify or Apple, wherever you find it. I also want to thank the good people listening on the radio today with all of our great radio affiliates broadcasting Sports Talk Chicago throughout the great state of Illinois, like 98.3 The Life, WKAN, W55 The Ticket, ACTV, JED TV, WJOB, Cities 92.9 Talk FM, and 101.1 Peoria Sports Radio. If you're watching us here on YouTube, like, comment, and question below. I'll explain the hat in just a second. On today's episode, it's just me. I'm going to go through each and every single Chicago sports team right now. And look, it's the summertime. So I'm not the kind of person that's going to be handing out grades right now in the middle of July. We are going to take the temperature, if you will, of each Chicago sports team, see how we're doing, see how I'm feeling, what's the path moving forward, and take it from there. And first of all, we're going to have to start with baseball because it is the summertime. And look, you're probably wondering if you're watching this on YouTube, I am wearing right now a Madison Mallards hat. Why am I doing that? Because I've pretty much have had it up to here with my Chicago baseball teams. Let's start first with the Chicago Cubs. Now, look, this is a team that about a week and a half ago, I said that they were about to turn the corner. And when I say turn the corner, I now mean turn the corner and drive straight into a ditch. They're playing the Philadelphia Phillies right now. I get it. Anaheim Angels coming into town. They're not very good. But look, the Chicago Cubs aren't very good. They are the third worst record in the National League. An abject disaster of a season that, look, I think a lot of people didn't think they were going to be World Series contenders, but I think the playoffs with 3 wild cards was an easy expectation. And look, they have the third worst record in the National League, and they're only 5 games out of the wild card. Can they turn it around? Sure, but there are no signs. There's no pulse. There's no heartbeat with this team right now. And I'm going to go with, and when we're talking about temperature checks with the Chicago Cubs, I think the Chicago Cubs are that day when it looks like the weather is going to be really good and you plan a barbecue, but there is rain in the forecast and rain eventually does show up and it completely wipes out your day. That's what this season has been like. This season has been like a barbecue that could have been a really great day, a fun event with the sun shining, maybe the beer flowing, the music pumping, and a storm rolls in the afternoon and just wipes it all out. And now you're stuck with soggy dogs and everybody's inside. You're asking everyone to take off their shoes. Someone has the wet socks walking around the apartment. It's a completely ruined day. That's what the Chicago Cubs are right now. And rolling back, you really start to ask yourself some questions about what Jed Hoyer's intentions were and how he probably fell in love a little bit too much with some expectations and maybe some production level that exceeded what should have been expected. And here's what I mean by that. When the Chicago Cubs in 2023 opened the season, the roster that they had at the time, I was not a big fan of. I was not a big fan of Dansby Swanson. Dansby Swanson was my 4th choice as a shortstop, and we're going to get to him in just a little bit. They patchworked the first base with Trey Mancini and Eric Hosmer, and they didn't really have a third base option, and we didn't really know what we were getting from Cody Bellinger at the time. I didn't really like the roster. I said it in the beginning that I don't think they had any elite talent. I thought that they were going to struggle. My quote at the time was that I was worried that the Chicago Cubs were going to be down 4-2 in the 8th inning, and all they needed was someone to come up and hit a 3-run home run, and we just don't have that guy in the lineup, and that's the kind of games that we were going to be playing. And look, to their credit, they completely flipped the script on that last year. And I said it on the show before, but I fell in love with the 2023 team. That team played hard. That team from the first few weeks, you saw it when Dansby Swanson was sliding into home plate, pumping his fist. That team had an energy to it. There was a camaraderie. There was a chemistry. They had a nice blend, a nice veteran blend of guys who had been to World Series that maybe hadn't hit the apex of their careers playing for something. And they got off to a rough start. Bellinger got hurt. Suzuki kind of in and out of the lineup, sort of finding their way. And then they got hot in July. They were able to turn it around. They ended up signing Jeimer Candelario. And I was one of those guys that in the middle of August, I was really thinking that the Chicago Cubs were going to make noise in the postseason. They had a terrible September. Multiple players did not play well. Cody Bellinger, Swanson, guys that I've already mentioned, didn't play well. And they headed into the offseason with, I think, a modicum of optimism at the time. But then here's what happened. Now, look, Craig Counsell, the move, let's see how this plays out, right? Different personality than David Ross. David Ross, more fiery, expects a lot out of his players, doesn't like to play the young kids. Kind of the Tom Thibodeau, a little bit of baseball managers. Craig Counsell, obviously coming from the Milwaukee organization, was known as a bullpen genius, a level-headed guy, and a guy that had consistently won, even if it wasn't in postseason. He hadn't really had that postseason success yet. So you say to yourself, okay, will you maybe possibly improve from the manager position? But again, what did the Chicago Cubs really do in the offseason that set themselves apart after probably what we're saying now was a charmed season in 2023? What we want to give them brownie points because they waited out the market for a Shota Imanaga. They waited out the market for a Hector Neris. They did a staring contest with Cody Bellinger and finally got a deal done. They were not proactive. They were not aggressive. And they clearly weren't interested in taking that next step. And they certainly were not interested in saying to themselves, we have one huge deficiency on this team, is that we lack elite star power. We lack slug. We lack velocity, whether it's pitching or whether it's hitting. We have a problem here. They didn't address it. They basically ran it back and thought that a new manager, a new piece for Imanaga, sure, maybe a better season from Jameson Taillon, which, by the way, they've gotten, and maybe more playing time for Christopher Morel, who, trust me, guys, he got plenty of playing time last year. He had 26 home runs, was going to fix what ailed this team. And, also, by the way, Craig Counsell was known for playing young players, developing them, and bringing them along. So they wanted to make that a priority. So how has that gone exactly? Well, it's gone terribly. Let's start first with playing the young players. I am a proponent of playing young kids and having them develop and turning into solid major league regulars, or maybe even all-star major league regulars at some point in their career. Here's the problem with what the Chicago Cubs are doing. They're trying to win while also bring along, I think, in my opinion, too many guys at the same time. When you look at bringing guys along, in my opinion, you want to only maybe do one or two of them at best on one side or the other. You can do one or two from the offense plus one or two from the defense. But the Chicago Cubs right now are trying to bring along 3 or 4 different guys. They're trying to bring along PCA. They're trying to bring along still, in my opinion, Christopher Morel. And they're also trying to bring along Miguel Amaya from the catching position. So what do you have? You basically have a bottom of your lineup where you have a Dansby Swanson hitting 220-something. You have a Pete Crow Armstrong hitting under 200. Christopher Morel now hitting under 200. And Miguel Amaya way under 200 at about 189. The second half of your lineup are basically easy outs. They're basically giving the team 7 to 9 outs almost every single game. So I get it. We're having not very productive or exciting or enticing seasons from a Cody Bellinger right now. Seiya Suzuki's incredibly frustrating. Nico Horner is taking a step back. All that aside, and Ian Happ, honestly, Ian Happ is who he is. He's going to hit 220 to 240, hit the ball out of the ballpark, get on base a little bit. Solid baseball player, but he's a piece, nothing more. The problem is the second half of that lineup leading to this no offense that the Chicago Cubs are dealing with. And I understand they've blown 17 saves this year. And there's a lot of things that have gone wrong all at once when you're talking about injuries, defense, bullpen, and offense. But the bottom line, when you talk about Jed Hoyer and what the front office has failed to do, is honestly, I look more at the offense than I do the bullpen. Sure, he punted on it. But again, bullpens are very fickle. Year in and year out, these guys go up, these guys go down. And I don't think he foresaw Julian Merriweather, Albert Alzolay, Mark Leiter, just to name a few of these guys that have ended up on the injured list and they've either come back, bounced back, or haven't come back at all. You can't predict that kind of stuff. You can create some certainty in your offense. The Chicago Cubs have just failed to do that. And it's time, guys. Here we go. I'm going to read off some stats for you. of what the Chicago Cubs have put forth this year to bring themselves to the third worst record in the National League. Spoiler alert, a lot of this stuff is going to make you upset. In the National League right now, they're third in walks, which is great. That's very much a Jed Hoyer model. They want guys that get on base. OBP is important. It's all about Moneyball. I totally understand that. But if you're talking about the true outcomes, they're also third in strikeouts. Okay, and they're middle, I think they're sixth or seventh in home runs. So when we're talking about the true outcomes right now, you've got the good, you certainly have the bad. Let's get to more bad here. Second to last in the National League in batting average, 14th, 228. 228 as a team. I ran this on my Twitter the other day, and I'm fearing this is going to date me. But do you realize that as of this taping, I'm taping this on a Wednesday, you're listening to it on Thursday or Friday. As of this taping, in Major League Baseball right now, there are only 13 qualified Major League hitters that are hitting over 300 right now. I'm going to say it again. There are 13 guys in Major League Baseball hitting over 300. In 1998, there were 49 players that were hitting over 300. In 2005, there were 29. 2010, 25. This year, only 13. So I understand that this is a bit of a league-wide issue here, but none more magnified than the Chicago Cubs offense right now. 228 team batting average. Slugging, maybe they're doing it in that department. Nope, they're not. They're 12th in the National League in slugging. They're 12th in the National League in OPS. They're 13th in the National League in doubles. So they're not hitting the ball over the wall. They're also not hitting the ball in the gaps either. They're a singles hitting team at best. And here's the one that's really going to piss you off. They're right now dead last in runners in scoring position. They're hitting 215. Just so you have an idea of how bad that is, the leader in the National League right now is the Milwaukee Brewers. They're hitting 275. They have 215 hits with runners in scoring position. The Chicago Cubs, they have 148. You do the math on that one. It ain't good. 67 hit difference right now, 15th in runners in scoring position. So they're walking, they're getting singles, and then maybe some people are getting to third base with runners in scoring position. We've seen it a lot. The Cubs have wasted a ton of opportunities, bases loaded, no outs, bases loaded, one out, runners on first and third, no outs. They can't capitalize. They can't get it done. And it's the same guys every single day. They're 20 of 37 in save opportunities. We've gone through that already. Not a big surprise here. They're also walks per 9 innings for their bullpen. They're averaging 4.38 walks per 9 innings. That's good for 14th in the National League. That's not going to get it done. They have the 4th most walks, also the 3rd most Ks. So, look, they are getting some swing and miss, even though they are lacking velocity. But the only problem is, without the velocity, you have these guys nibbling around the corners, trying to be tight around the margins, and therefore leading to more walks, more opportunities, more runners on the base paths for the opposition. Not great. And then on top of that, once they walk the guy, they're giving up the 5th most home runs in the National League. They're 11th in bullpen ERA. I'm trying to find some glimmers of hope here. I mean, Look, you still have time in this season to turn around. The only problem is this Chicago Cubs team hasn't given you one clue, one crumb that they're able to turn it around. There is one stat that I'll throw out there just as some optimism. They're right now 14th in the National League in BABIP. That's batted balls in play. They're at 281. Basically, for those of you that aren't familiar with BABIP, it's basically luck. Is what it is. When a guy hits the ball hard, does it find a hole or does it go straight into a guy's glove? They measure that stuff now, and they are well below average of what we would call luck. So Christopher Morel can hit the ball 105 miles an hour off the bat. If it goes straight to the shortstop's glove, it's a hang with him, right? Instead of maybe finding somewhere else. They haven't been incredibly lucky in that department. But again, with guys like Christopher Morel, Cody Bellinger, Dansby Swanson, these guys are hitting the ball on the ground. They're not hitting the ball in the air very often. The other one that I want to get to here before we start thinking about what happens moving forward is, oh my gosh, we got to talk about Dansby Swanson. And this guy, I have to give credit where credit's due because this made me laugh. Tyler Aki from ESPN 1000 put out a tweet after Trey Turner on Tuesday night hit 2 home runs as the Cubs lost again to a Philadelphia Phillies team that was minus Bryce Harper, minus Kyle Schwarber. They still put up 6 runs. The Philadelphia Phillies, if I may very quickly, are basically a dream team comprised of Cubs blogs that you've read the last 3 or 4 years. If you look up in the last 3 or 4 years of what Cubs blogs have been writing about, it's should we sign Nick Castellanos? Should the Cubs make a run at Zach Wheeler? Is Bryce Harper and the Cubs a fit? What happened with Kyle Schwarber? Should we go after Trey Turner? All these guys, guess what? They're on the Philadelphia Phillies, and guess who's the best team in the National League? It's either the Phillies or it's the Dodgers. Records-wise, it says it's the Phillies. But Tyler Aki and ESPN 1000 said, basically, Trey Turner was the elite shortstop while the Chicago Cubs settled for the Carlos Boozer of shortstops in the offseason. And I'll be honest, I just had to laugh because Dansby Swanson right now is Carlos Boozer. And that is very, very much what this Chicago Cubs team is all about when we're talking about spending money. But I'll get to that in a second. The guys that were out there that we could have signed. Personally, I was a Trey Turner guy. I have the tapes to prove it. It's not because the dude is hitting 338 right now with a 487 slugging percentage. And even in a down season last year, he still rebounded to hit 266 with over 25 home runs and 75 RBIs. But the rest of the guys, look, Carlos Correa right now having a great season, hitting 310, OBP 378, slugging 510. He's got 10 home runs, 41 RBIs. I know that the medicals were a little strange, but obviously better option than Dansby Swanson. And the dude did short-term deals until he came back and then finally signed a big deal. Xander Bogaerts, look, he's been hurt this year. He's hitting only 219. Kind of hard to gauge a little bit whether that was a better move than a Dansby Swanson. I don't think his contract is going to look great by the end of it. But last season, he hit 285, on-base percentage 340, slugging 440 last year. And honestly, if we remember correctly and we want to be honest with ourselves, the Chicago Cubs were never considering Xander Bogaerts to play shortstop. They were considering him more to play third base at that time. Back to Dansby Swanson. I got a fun one for you. Dansby Swanson. Now, if you remember, Cubs signed Dansby Swanson. I did a show with John. We talked Jason Hayward comps. We kind of went, we'll see. And I can be seduced by this guy. I'll be honest. He was a former number 1 pick. Does have a lot of great leadership qualities, is a quality shortstop as evidenced by his Gold Glove last year, even though this year it's been a little bit more leaky than normal. But handsome looking dude, looks like a winner, sign me up, right? Comes to Chicago, signs a huge deal. And if you guys remember in April, Dansby Swanson was amazing on the Chicago Cubs. I mean, the dude came out absolutely on fire. He was playing great. We already had him sliding into home, pumping his fists. He brought a little fire. Looked like he meant business. This is the kind of leader that this kind of rock kind of leader that we want in the clubhouse. Dansby Swanson on April 17th of 2023. Dansby Swanson was hitting 368 at that particular time, and everything was looking awesome. Since that day, all the way up to today, he is, since then, in 770 at-bats, has only 173 hits, and is hitting 224. Since April 17th. So this isn't even so much a this year problem. It kind of was a last year problem too as well. I appreciate the fact that he drove in 80 runs. There were moments that he did come up with big hits, but again, he hit 184 in September last year. One of the guys that we really needed to step up when you're talking about a rock, when you're talking about a leader, the guy that's going to take us to the promised land, serious about winning. Dansby Swanson hits 184 in September. You know, you need those guys to step up, and he clearly didn't. He's hitting 224 since April 17th of 2023. We got years left on this dude's deal. And to be honest with you, the biggest problem is it could be something mechanical, but it just doesn't look like he's catching up to the fastball right now. It doesn't look like the bat speed is there. And that's a huge problem. And he's a dude who, if you watch him, compare him to, let's say, a Cody Bellinger or even an Ian Happ, you will see different swing paths from an Ian Happ, and you'll see different swing paths from Cody Bellinger. Dansby Swanson, it is the same swing every time. He tries to be short, connect, go straight to the ball, and go for it. So I'm trying to figure out, you can add a little toe tap in there. Maybe you can change your hands. I think it's a bat speed issue right now, and he's just not catching up to the fastball. And like a lot of people in this Cubs lineup right now, they are looking at fastballs straight down the plate, guessing wrong. And it's just become a real issue. So what do we do? What do we do? Justin Steele has 0 wins. They're filled with good, mediocre, not great players. We're hearing rumors that should they trade Nico Horner right now for prospects. I'm going to go with a no right there on Nico Horner. The catching position is incredibly difficult right now. I don't know. They have a guy in AAA right now hitting the ball well, Ballesteros. I don't think he's an option for this year. They're going to have to figure it out next year. I mean, at this point, again, I think this is something where you kind of ride it out with the guys that you have, do a reboot, and then seriously look in the mirror and say to yourself, well, we can't walk into next year, I think, with both Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki. We have to give another kid a chance and open up the DH spot a little bit. Or you say to yourself, maybe PCA isn't the player that we thought he was. I like Michael Busch a lot. I wish he wasn't a first baseman, though. I wish he was a third baseman or second baseman. At first base, you need slug. You need that Pete Alonso there. He's a quality player, but again, a quality player at a position that you need premium production from. And I think that's a huge problem. These next couple of weeks are going to be interesting, Cubs fans. I mean, we had the burgers, we had the dogs out, the music was pumping, and all of a sudden those dark clouds started rolling in. They're rolling in right now, and you're hearing the thunder, and you're hearing the rain. And right now, the Chicago Cubs, their season right now is getting rained out, and everybody's inside wishing that maybe they had thought a little bit differently before they planned a big party that would have been a Chicago Cubs playoff run, because I just ain't seeing it right now.